Thank you for that introduction. Yang terhormat Minister Raja Judi Antony, Minister of Forestry, and Minister Hanif Faisal Nurafik from Ministry of Environment. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Pak Hashim, I think, apologizes for not being able to open our session today. So you got the other special envoy. He's the special envoy on climate and energy who's heading our delegation. And I'm now the special envoy on international trade and multilateral cooperation. But before this, to link to the GBFA, in the previous government, I was special envoy on the Global Blended Finance Alliance. So that explains why I'm probably the person that will try to update you, apart from the film you just saw, on what's happened with the G20 Bali Global Blended Finance Alliance. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, so we now tend to just refer to it as GBFA. But please don't forget the G20 and the Bali in front of it. So let me just go through some of the slides to help you see where we've gone in the last 2 years. So as was already mentioned, in the last 2 years, since this initiative was launched at the G20 Bali in November 2022, we have come a long way, to the extent that we are now fulfilling already the criteria for creating an international organization, which is negotiating the Articles of Agreement. We had 9 countries join us to sign an LOI as prospective members. And then a process of negotiation started. And the 9 countries that signed the LOI is a very interesting combination. Some G20 countries like France and Canada, so developed countries, as well as developing countries like DRC and Fiji and Kenya, as well as good partners, other partners such as UAE, given that they were the host of COP29 last year. And now we have already negotiated an Articles of Agreement, and 2 countries have signed, Indonesia and Kenya. And we are hoping to see 2 more countries sign during the COP29 here. Fiji and UAE are prospectively going to be signing later, not today. We tried to do it today, but given the schedules of everyone, we couldn't manage to do it today. And I also wanted to mention that we have a lot of knowledge partners, some of them here present with us today and who will be in the talk show, and that this journey started before 2022. It started in 2018, and I know, John, you were there, Andrew, you were there, Catherine, you were there, from the beginning of our journey, as well as OECD. So this is not something that just happened in the last 2 years. It's been a journey, and thank you to all who came to us on this journey. Let me just remind everybody what is GBFA all about, even though the video emphasized the main message. It was intended to, can you go to the next slide, please? It was intended to address the financing gap for climate action and SDGs. The estimate for climate action ranges from 1 to 2 trillion. If you add SDGs into there, it's going to be like something like 6 trillion. And based on the Paris Agreement, the 100 billion was only met actually in 2022. And really, there's this big financing gap. And not only that, if you look at the last bar on that graph, it tells you that the 100 billion was supposed to catalyze more financing from the private sector. But that didn't happen. For every $1 of concessional funding, it's crowding in at the moment less than $1 of private capital. So the question is why, especially for developing countries. And this is really the main value added, and why Indonesia has come with this initiative of GBFA. Next slide, please. Because this is the barriers that developing countries face. First is really the absence of critical policy and regulatory frameworks. Countries need to have a clear strategy on what is their long-term low-carbon development strategy and which sectors they're going to prioritize. Second is the higher risk of developing countries. They are below investment grade, they have higher capital costs, so there's a risk element. So we talk a lot about how to de-risk the blended finance for developing countries. Third is limited fiscal space. Our estimate from our Ministry of Finance is that we're going to need $280 billion up to 2030 to be able to just address our climate action. We're not talking about the SDGs. Out of the 280 billion, only 30% will be able to come from the budget. The rest has to come from the private sector as well as other sources. And of course, finally, the capacity of developing countries, whether it's the human capital or the lack of finance, data, and standards. So this is the challenges we face. Next slide. Oh, this is already on the next slide. People are asked, can you just go back to the, yeah. This initiative started actually under President Jokowi from 2018, and then 2022, we did get the support from G20 to become an initiative, and now it's becoming an international organization, and the support is continued into the current new government. And if you were here for Pa Hashim's remarks yesterday, he emphasized that this new government is going to continue the commitments of the previous government, and this is one of the commitments we hope that we will be able to continue. Next, so we have articles of agreement, we have the establishment, what are the next steps, and what can I share with you about the next steps? Of course, we will have to continue the process of setting this up as an international organization. We will have continued bilateral discussions, obviously with getting countries on board as well as knowledge partners on board, you know, all the administrative process of setting it up, the governance and the structure. But in parallel, as we are doing this, we do intend to start working already with a number of activities around, next slide, please. Around the 3 pillars of GBFA. The 3 pillars are country-led platforms, institutional capacity building, convening, and partnerships. Let me just say something about country-led platforms, because I think this is really the biggest value added we hope we can achieve with GBFA. The notion that we must have country-led and country-owned country platforms that are talking about green growth and strategies that go with it, and how to identify the priorities, which sectors which have the most development impact, the most impact on sustainability, whether it's decarbonization as well as livelihoods, and doability and deployability in terms of technology. So it's not enough to just have a wish list of projects. We've got to have, you know, it's got to be pragmatic and practical. What can we do? What can we do in the short term? What can we do in the longer term? Then you translate that strategy into a portfolio of projects. This is the intention that we have. Then you identify the investment needs and the financing. So that's kind of the logic of what we hope we can help countries do. And this is, in a way, learning from the Just Energy Transition platform, which started out as a rather top-down, I should be more diplomatic in my language, process that started with the G7. And then in the process, developing countries like Indonesia said, well, it doesn't work the way you want it to work, yeah? And because of our condition, because of our institutional constraints and so on. So it's gotta be country-led and country-owned, otherwise it just doesn't work. And this comes from many years of experience, obviously, in doing this kind of thing. So let me just identify several priorities that we have identified, which we hope, as we are forming this international organization, what we intend to do. We intend to do really not just have a talk shop with, you know, papers and this event is important as part of the dissemination and getting inputs from all of you, but we want to go more than that. We want to be able to actually be able to identify potential projects that we can learn from and conduct the kind of knowledge sharing platform between developing countries, South-South collaboration, and obviously the human capacity building that will be needed. And really the country-led platforms, I think, is the key to start with. And we have comparative case studies already in place, learning from the Just Energy Transition platforms in the different countries. That's one area. Brazil has launched an ecological country platform. And South Africa is also planning to launch not an overall platform, but an energy platform as well. So we think this is the beginning of being able to learn from each other and see what works and what needs to be done to structure it properly. And then finally, the strengthened partnerships between all our networks, whether it's government or our knowledge partners. So I think the next few slides are actually just going into detail as to the three pillars. But basically what we intend to do is do a lot of institutional capacity building to provide policy support, create knowledge sharing platforms, and conduct training. This can be done virtually, online, as well as offline and online, and launch the kind of training and support needed for developing countries. And we also believe that this GBFA is important, and the value added comes from the South-South cooperation and learning from each other to really make sure that countries can come up with their own country-led and country-owned platform to accelerate what we call a green growth strategy, which is underpinned by the policies and the institutional enablers, as well as identifying the priority sectors and therefore the projects, and then help to launch the collaborative projects together. And finally, convening the partnerships. We have a great panel coming up with all our previous and ongoing partners, which we hope will continue to support us. It's really about convening. How do we convene all stakeholders, but not just convene to meet, but convene around issues that really address what is needed by the private investors and the ones who have the money to be able to give the money to the developing countries that need it. We've got to break out from this pattern where the ones who have money, like GFANS, 130 trillion, they said, okay, we have the money, where are the projects? And then the developing countries are saying, look, we've done all this effort. Here's what we need, 280 billion. Where's the money? Yeah, we need to break that and make the convening come about to be able to address these bottlenecks and really come around a portfolio of projects that will be meaningful and become the catalyst to be able to be scaled up. This is really our wish and our hope, and we hope that you will all give us input and most importantly, join us on this journey. It's a very important journey. We hope that the new 100 billion is going to be, I don't know what's the scale of the new 100 billion, but even if it's 1 trillion, it's still not enough, right? And the 1 trillion or the 150 billion, I don't know what is the estimate for the new 100 billion that we're going to hope next year. It needs to be catalyzing a whole lot more of private and other sources of funding to come together on a blended finance platform. So I thank you, and I'm looking forward to the inputs from the panel forthcoming. Thank you so much.